Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order and welcome everyone to our meeting. I acknowledge that we are meeting tonight here and from other locations within the traditional, historic, ancestral homelands of the Algonquin people. And I would like to thank the Algonquin people for hosting us on their land, being mindful of the knowledge that they have shared with us and respecting their ancestral rights here. Moving on, are there any declarations of interest from trustees? And I am seeing none. So that brings us to briefing from the chair of the board, Trustee Lyra.
Approval of the agenda. Trustee Scott, approval of the agenda.
Sorry?
Approval of the agenda.
The agenda, I'm sorry. Right, approval of the agenda, and we do need a motion for that. Trustee Milburn, are there any changes to tonight's agenda? And I'm not seeing any. So we can have the vote on the agenda. All those in favor and opposed, and that motion is carried. And that does bring us on to the briefing from the chair. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you. Good evening. On behalf of the board, I'd like to express our appreciation to all those students who've been running during recesses, gym classes, and special events in support of Terry Fox. Coupled with this, I would also like to thank parents and caregivers for supporting those efforts through donations to cancer research. Second, the next Committee of the Whole meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 17th. Items for discussion that evening include the board work plan and narrowing our 3 areas of focus, learning, well-being, and social responsibility into a yearly action plan. Consultations regarding the new Finley Creek Elementary School will begin this month. Working groups will be formed and be active in November, and a public consultation will be held in December. Finally, I would like to inform the community that on October 5th, the OCDSB will be holding a job fair for early childhood educators and educational assistants. It's an excellent way to meet our staff and learn more about some of the exciting career opportunities at the OCDSB. More information can be found on our website. That concludes my report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Trustee Lyra? Seeing none, that moves us to the briefing from the director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Diplôme d'études en langue française, known as the DELF, is an internationally recognized French proficiency test for persons whose first language is not French. The OCDSB offers DELF administrations to eligible students twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. Information for the upcoming fall administration was communicated to eligible secondary students on October 2nd via their OCDSB email account. On Wednesday, November 1st, all secondary students in the OCDSB will have the chance to explore post-secondary pathways and career possibilities. Grade 9 students will be encouraged to participate in Take Our Kids to Work Day. Students in grades 10 to 12 will be able to, participate in the launch of 2023, a one-day virtual Pathways and Career Exploration Conference. More information will be shared with students and families shortly. Also in the next month, we invite parents, and caregivers to join us on Saturday, November 4th at Brookfield High School for the OCDSB Family Conference. This free in-person event features multiple expert-led workshops for parents and caregivers, including some offered in Arabic and Somali. We will share the registration and more information around details shortly as well. On Friday, October 6th, it is a professional activity day for the OCDSB school staff. It will focus on ministry priorities, which include student mental health and well-being, literacy, and numeracy. There will be no classes for students on this day, again, Friday, October 6th, nor will there be any school on Monday due to the statutory holiday, Monday, October 9th. I wish everyone in our community a wonderful and relaxing long weekend. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And are there any questions for the director? Seeing none, next item on our agenda is delegations, and we do have one delegation this evening, in person or virtual. virtual. And I would like to call upon Kate Neal to make her presentation. You have 4 minutes to do this regarding your concerns with the capital priorities submission. So when you're ready, please go ahead. And I should add that after the presentation, there could be up to 3 questions for clarification if there's anything that requires clarification. Welcome to our meeting. And we are not hearing you. I'm not sure what the audio, if there's a problem with the audio connection.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for granting me permission to speak. I am here to discuss why the opening of a new OCDSB school on the site on Rosehill Avenue should be put forth as a priority for the Capital Priorities Commission report. So having a public school within walking distance was one of the main reasons we, along with many others, chose to build in the Fairwinds community, which is where the Rosehill site is located. Giving children the ability to walk to school is not only better for the environment, it's better for their bodies and for developing a sense of community in which they live. However, despite builder promises, it has been over 7 years since we've moved into the neighborhood and the lot continues to be vacant. The impetus for my coming here tonight, however, is the busing crisis. Ultimately, our bus, like many others, has been completely canceled. This is not the first time our bus to Stittsville Public School has been canceled. 2 years ago, we did not have a bus from the second week of September until January. Last June, we suddenly lost our bus driver and bus once again. From our house, it is approximately about 35-minute walk for an adult to that school. It includes crossing the major road of Hazeldean and walking along either Fringewood or Iber Road, neither of which have contiguous sidewalks. It's not safe or viable on a daily basis for high school students, let alone kindergarten students. Much of the community is even further, as the entire Fairwinds community has to be bused to our closest local public school. I propose that the solution for the busing crisis in our neighborhood, at least, is to provide us a school within walking distance. If the school board cannot provide safe transportation to our local public school, it needs to provide us with a school we can walk ourselves to. According to the City of Ottawa's statistics and demographics, the ward of Stittsville has grown from 32,494 in 2016 to 52,540 in 2023. Many of these families have young children. In that time, one new elementary public school has been built, helping to alleviate the stress in the Fernbank region of Canada-Stittsville, but having little effect on the Fairwinds community and other parts of Stittsville. On top of the substantial building that is currently taking place in Stittsville, there are currently 7 active plans for subdivision applications pending for Ward 6, according to the City of Ottawa's Development Application Search Tool. By my estimation, 4 or 5 would likely fall directly into the boundaries of the proposed school on Rosehill, at the very least within the Stittsville Public School boundaries. One of those applications includes a proposal for a low-rise apartment blocks, which contains 460 units, while another includes, for example, 101 townhomes plus many more. 2 state that they are proposing respectively 631 and 529 residential units. Stittsville, and specifically the region that would populate the proposed school on Rosehill, is growing at an extremely fast rate, and we need to be ready for that. The public high school in Stittsville is still in the process of being built, and to the heavy disappointment of many middle schoolers, was not able to be open this year as promised. Given the years it takes to approve and build a school and the explosive growth in Stittsville is experiencing and will continue to experience, I feel we need to approve a school on the Rosehill site now. We can't afford another situation like what occurred at John Young and Westwin prior to the new Shingwakan school being built. Dozens of portables are not a safe solution, with children outside unsupervised as they travel into the school to go to the bathroom, and they are creating sightline issues for duty teachers. 2 years ago, according to the 2021 OCDSB's enrollment statistics summary, Stittsville Public School had 633 students and 2 portables. This year, as of October 2nd, they have 752 students and 10 portables. Ours is just one of the many schools in Stittsville, Canada that are above capacity. I have been told it takes 2 to 3 years at least to build a new school, and given the delays of both Shinglecons and the Stittsville Public High School, I don't feel we can afford to wait. Let's avoid having kindergarten students on the 2nd floor again without their own bathrooms. Let's prioritize the school in Roseville. Thanks for your time.
And thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Are there any questions for Ms. Neal? And I am not seeing any questions. I think that we have everything in the written submission, so we really appreciate the detail. And we will be discussing the capital priorities submission later in our agenda, so please feel free to continue watching, and some of the issues you've mentioned may be raised then.
Thank you. I have to put my kids to bed, but I will look at the agenda afterwards. Thank you.
It'll be there on the YouTube if for you to watch later. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Moving on then with our agenda to item 8.1, matters for action. Report 23-070, the capital priorities submission. Mr. Director.
Through you, Madam Chair, I will turn this right over to Associate Director Giroir and Manager Ostafchuk for their perspective.
Through you, Chair, I'm going to turn it over to Manager Ostafchuk.
Hello. Thanks very much. This is probably the first time, well, it is the first time through a capital call for a majority of the trustees. So I thought I would give you a bit of background just so you're aware of how things work. And it is sometimes a process that makes us all scratch our heads, but we all do the best we can with it. So when a capital call goes out, it is for the distinct purpose of building new pupil places. It is not for renovation. It is not for renewal of buildings. We have about $75 million annually that we set aside for that, for existing facilities and attention there. This is for the creation of new pupil places. Generally speaking, those pupil places tend to be focused in growth areas because that's where the acuity of the need is the greatest. The ministry, we don't have our own means to build these pupil places. It has to flow directly from the province. We don't have our own capital fund to make these determinations on our own. So the ministry comes out from time to time, and I don't mean to be imprecise with this, but we never know when they're going to make a capital call or when the next one will come. They happen every year or two. There was a 3-year stretch before the pandemic where no capital call was made. But every year and a half or so, you will hear from the province. And then we, along with 72 other boards, put in our priorities to them so that they can consider these matters. And they make the decisions on what gets funded and what does not get funded. It is a one-time thing. We don't get any explanation about why we got the money or why we didn't get the money. We just simply try and put forward the best business case that we can each time. The other thing that the province has not been able to do, and their hands at the ministry are tied a bit by their own treasury board, is do what we've asked for some time, give us multi-year planning. If you're not going to let us build this school this year, tell me I can build it next year or the year after. And you can imagine in a crowded situation how that would inform the plans that we put in place to manage enrollment in those intervening times. Unfortunately, that multi-year planning simply has not happened with the province. So we got this capital call in mid-August. The details and the information sessions held staff to staff were held at the end of August and the beginning of September. So the beginning of September, obviously not an ideal time for any department at any school board to be dropping things for this, but that is something that we've had to do in order to respond to this call. This call has been significantly different than others. And part of it has to do with the ministry's responsiveness to us. We have been concerned in the past that we've put in business cases and been approved for funding and yet had subsequent levels of approvals required after the fact. You're approved for funding for a school, but then there's an approval to tender that's required before you go to tender, and steps required before shovels go in the ground. And so the province has changed this capital call. We hope in an effort, I think that's their intent too, to cut down on those approval processes after the initial funding announcement, but it means that a much more detailed business case has to go in than has previously been submitted. The difference is this time through, they are looking for fairly detailed architectural schematics. They essentially want the school designed, and they are looking for very detailed cost estimates for the construction of these schools. And so each time we do this, doing a Class D estimate is quite an involved process. So we are pleased that they're taking these steps to, I think, cut down on subsequent approvals. But for now, it means a lot more work in the business cases. In addition to that additional work and information for the business cases, they're looking at board performance assessments in their decision-making. And so they're going to look at past performance and adherence to project timelines, time to completion, cost overages, if any. They're going to look at our existing inventory of active projects to see whether or not they think we have the capacity to take on more. Adherence to space benchmarks and capital accountability. So all of these things, we think we are in a good place as a board to answer all of these things. We have had delays in projects through COVID in particular. That is not unique to this board. But otherwise, our projects have generally been on time and on budget. And so we are hoping that that past reputation sets us forward in good stead. In the past, we have had different methodologies to look at what our priorities would be as a board. This time through, because of the time constraints, and the full business cases, by the way, do have to be in by October 20th. And so that doesn't give a lot of turnaround time when you look at the level of detail and specificity they're looking for now in the business cases. So what we have typically done is brought forward these items for a discussion, and certainly are prepared to do that tonight. Our method as staff, our thinking was that we were bringing forward, 5 priorities for you to consider. 4 of the 5 are repeats. We have put these in before for funding. We think that these projects are still valid. We have everything we think we need to be ready to move on these projects if given approval. For example, we own the land. It is in place. There are certainly other considerations and competing interests for this, but we've tried to come up with the priorities that we think are, I don't want to say slam dunks, but ones that we have very compelling business cases for. I'll go through them one by one. The first of them, though, is one that is not a repeat. The first priority that we have suggested to you, and it's one that we have debated long and hard internally, is an addition to Earl of March High School. Earl of March High School is an older school, obviously. It went through a transition when it became a 7 to 12 school, subsequent to the large district-wide accommodation reviews. And right now, when I look at that West End area of the city, we're really stuck as far as high school space goes. West Carleton is full. Stittsville High School, when it opens, will almost immediately be full. A.Y. Jackson is another priority on this list and is full. And certainly Earl of March with 31 portables is way over capacity. We do have 2 new high school sites set aside in Canada. We can get to neither of them at this point in time. And when I say that, I mean, they are not buildable sites. We can drive by them and look at them. There's stormwater management issues. There are pipes in the ground issues to actually building on either of these two sites. Given that, and by the way, we are meeting monthly with the City of Ottawa and developers in the area in an effort to move one or both of these sites along. We have been doing this for the past 5 months, I believe. So this is not, we're not sitting here idly waiting for these sites, but these sites have not come through. And until a developer actually phases these out for us to acquire and build upon, there is little sense for us in trying to acquire a blob on a map that you cannot actually stick a shovel in the ground and build a high school. So we have considered strongly what we can do at Earl of March with its 31 portables and what we could do in the interim that makes sense. And because of the state of the enrollment at all of the high schools around it, because it is a 7 to 12 school and looking at, do we do something with the intermediate panel and moving it? There is such wholesale change in taking on any interim measure there that we have tonight recommended to you an addition be placed at Earl of March High School in an attempt to manage this enrollment. We wanted to be careful with what we were proposing for the high school because we don't want to damage the business case for those subsequent high schools by alleviating all the pressure. Unfortunately, when it comes to these sorts of things, the province looks to some measure of pressure to justify the next build. The addition that we are proposing at Earl of March will not alleviate the need for either a high school in Canada West or Canada North. They are still needs, and we will continue to have those conversations with the City of Ottawa and with the development community in order to free up those spaces. The second priority is one that we have had on the list and have submitted a number of times. It is an addition to A.Y. Jackson Secondary School. And the reason that we are repeating that is to amplify the problem at Earl of March as well. We now have the development coming online in Southern Canada and the gap between Canada Stittsville, which puts pressure at AY. And so we think that this addition, which has been submitted, I believe, 5 times to the province, the business case is stronger than it has ever been. And we've put forward some strong business cases for it in the past. We do believe that given it's a smaller high school to begin with, a significant addition is required at A.Y. Jackson Secondary School. And again, it will not alleviate, doing that addition will not alleviate the need for the next high schools in Canada. The third capital priority is again a repeat. That is an addition at Viscount Alexander School. It is one inside the Greenbelt, and it is a school that we see with the pressure of EFI growing at that area. We need some extra room in the downtown core. It is one of the only facilities that is fairly straightforward to add on to. When you're looking at older facilities in the core, it happens with any renovation to an older building, especially one that is occupied by students, you get into issues of complexity. But we feel that this Viscount Alexander addition is still required. Recommendation for priority 4 is a new elementary school in the East Urban Center. And again, there was some debate amongst staff. We own a few sites right now in Orleans for elementary schools that as that area develops, the East Urban community, Mer Bleu, we know that we will need those schools. We don't acquire those sites without knowing that they will be built at some time in the future. The East Urban site, we had some internal debate about whether or not we should go with the very recently required Mer Bleu site, which is a property that board just approved that we acquire, and that sale has just gone through, or if we should stand with the East Urban Community 1 site, which is the property that we ended up going with. It's one that has been submitted previously. It is one that we have held for some period of time, and we think the community has an expectation that a school will be built there. It, as well as the Maribleau site, will alleviate some of the pressure that we're seeing right now at Glen Ogilvy and Emily Carr. And there is also pressure at Dunning-Faubert that this needs to alleviate some pressure from. So we have left this as a repeat of our priorities. It's one that's been submitted to the province before, but we think this one is valid. The final recommendation is for a new elementary school in Riverside South, the EUC, the new Riverside South number 2 elementary school. Again, this is a repeat of a priority that we have submitted. With the opening of the new Riverside South High School, there is some ease at the elementary level with Steve McLean, but we are mindful of the housing starts that we see pulled in the south of Earl Armstrong Road area, the Summerhill area, and the building that goes on there. And so we have considered strongly when we need this school built and feel that it's important to put it in front of the province again as our 5th priority. I don't want to imply to you that this was just simply the ease of resubmitting priorities that we put in before. There was long and healthy debate about all of them. We did consider other projects, as you heard tonight from a delegate, and it's one that we considered too. There is a need for a new elementary school that's emerging in the Stittsville area. However, as the Stittsville High School opens and 7s and 8s are removed from some of the elementary schools and boundaries are adjusted, some of it has already been adjusted, but we think there's room for more boundary adjustment there. And as such, we know that that would be scrutinized heavily by the province. And when there's capacity to be used in an area first, they will expect that prior to the building of new pupil places. We think the school is certainly coming on. We think there is momentarily a bit of breathing room, which is why it has not appeared as a priority. We also looked at other needs in Barrhaven specifically. We know that there is a real need to get another high school in the Barrhaven area. LDH is full, McRae is over capacity, and it is a constrained site. However, we are just in a position now to move on acquisition of the next high school site. There is a thought that if we don't have that property in our hands, in our ownership, the business case is not as strong as we would like it to be. And therefore, even though it is an emerging need, we have left it off this particular recommendation. We have also looked carefully inside the Greenbelt. Schools, I'll just give one example, schools such as Pleasant Park, which have been full for some time, and whether or not an addition is what is needed to alleviate that pressure, or whether or not there should be more than likely accommodation studies to try and balance things out better. And again, in this iteration, with instructions from the province, they were really clear that if they have a look at adjacent schools and see anything other than 100% capacity or overcapacity situations, I don't know how sympathetic they're going to be to the business case. But it's not to say that we did not look at this and many other situations. We've tried to pare this down to what we think is doable, given the increased need for information with these business cases, the very detailed architectural drawings, Class D estimates, that sort of thing, and what is doable by October 20th, and what is reasonably something that they will look at with favor. So perhaps I'll leave it at that, with the assurance that we are talking to the province about these and all of the other priorities that I've mentioned and more on a monthly basis now, meeting with them so that they are aware of what's going on in the district. But these are the priorities that we have put forward for you to consider this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I would note that there is a recommendation at the end of the report itself. I have a fast-growing speakers list, beginning with Trustee Aziz.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I'd like to put forth the recommendations that the following capital priorities be submitted to the Ministry of Education in response to the 2023-2024 capital call. In addition to Earl of March, in addition to AY Jackson, in addition to Viscount Alexander Public School, a new elementary school in the East Urban community, and a new elementary school in Riverside South.
Did you have any introduction for your motion?
If I may. Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief. First, I'll start by thanking staff for pulling this together. I'm grateful to see that 4 of the 5 of these are repeats, as we know that there are a number of stressors across the school board when it comes to meeting our students' various needs and the growing communities across Ottawa. As the representative for Canada, I'm grateful to see that AY Jackson is again looking for an addition as it's a growing school. And as noted in the report, it's possible that we'll see more portables, and it's not something we want to see replicated. As Earl of March is a new addition to this conversation, it is in dire need of support. We don't want to see 31 portables at AY Jackson the way we see it at Earl. And I'm grateful that we've received such a detailed update in regards to the additions being a temporary solution, as we understand that long-term solutions are definitely needed in Canada. And I appreciate the creativity in looking to support our students in this growing community. And I am hoping my colleagues will support these recommendations, as staff have indicated that these are repeats, and that the work is ongoing with the city and hopefully with the province to develop long-term solutions to some of the growing communities across the city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Aziz. Next speaker is Trustee Blackburn.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to my colleague for that very thorough and well done introduction. I too will be supporting this motion. And I do know that staff have a very big job at hand, that we have a very, very big district with many areas of growth. And I appreciate the fact that they're keeping an eye on Barrhaven and all the other growth areas too. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Blackburn. Trustee Jennings.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to staff for this very fulsome report. I too will be supporting the recommendation. Just a couple questions from our previous board. The very last priorities list, if you could just refresh our memory. You mentioned the 3 that are on this priorities list. Is it the same as the previous list? Did we have 3 with it?
There was a bit of a blip with the province and what they were asking for. What they had said at one of the, I believe it was the second to last call, is you can only put in 3 repeat priorities, give us 2 that are brand new that we haven't seen before. And so they were, if you will, a Canada high school when we did not own a site or know when we were going to get to it. And or in lieu of the EUC1, a Mer Bleu school. And at that time, we did not own the site. But in the last couple of priority calls, AY Jackson, Viscount, East Urban, the new elementary in East Urban community, and the new elementary school in Riverside South are all repeat priorities that the province has seen in the past.
Thank you for that. And of course, thank you for prioritizing Riverside South and Barrhaven for Trustee Blackburn, certainly in growing communities. Will you be providing the trustees for whichever zone they fall under the district needs analysis? I do recall receiving a paper copy. I guess digital is more environmentally friendly, but will you be providing for the trustees the district needs analysis?
Yes, we can do that. We have an updated district needs analysis that can be shared.
And thank you. And lastly, I know we've talked about ranking in the past, and it's not always a fun question. Did you want to share your thoughts on ranking?
The ranking is a requirement of the province. We have always argued that it may be a more divisive sort of exercise here, but we have ranked them in the order in which they appear in the recommendations. Also for, subsequent to board making a decision on this, we will have more detailed narratives going out to the trustees. If a priority is there in your zone, or for others, just sharing the narrative portion of the business cases, so you have that to fall back on for information.
Thank you. And so we're only allowed 5 priorities for this list, correct?
No, we are not. We have put forward 5. You could put more through, but again, I will emphasize to you the detail that is required at this level now with these submissions that we put in for business cases. So even though in theory there is an unlimited number of priorities you can put in, I think it shows some, first of all, deference to the province and the work they have sorting through 72 different boards, that you stick to the ones that you think are the most viable priorities at this point in time. And also we have to appreciate that there is limited time to come up with schematics and estimates, budgets for these. Although, if there was something that trustees were absolutely adamant about, we would do our absolute best. But there is a capacity issue with this as well that I think has to be kept in mind.
Thank you. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jenkins. Trustee Kaplan-Wirth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Sorry, I'm going to have my back to you just to speak into the microphone. I support this motion. I just have a question, as my constituents are all in the core. So one question is in terms of the school condition improvements. So rather than building schools, but looking at the conditions of existing schools in terms of the district needs analysis. My understanding is that there is a separate component of funding that will be allocated to things like the ventilation review. I just wanted to make sure that that wouldn't be lost in the shuffle. And specifically having to do with our motion that we approved at our last meeting in terms of school boards being able to look at reports on improvements in ventilation and air quality. What can we expect to see? And is that going to be only from the perspective of whether or not HVAC is working, or will it also look at the effects of poor air quality on our students and our staff?
I think I can answer this in terms of the capital priorities, in that the items that you're speaking of, the renewal and renovation, are a totally different fund than this. So this is a distinctly different funding stream that looks at the creation of new pupil places. As I said in my introduction, there's about 75 million for renewal and renovation that is spent annually on all kinds of schools for all kinds of renovations. I can't speak to the specifics of the ventilation report that was done. I understood a motion was passed on it, so this does not impact that.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. No, I didn't think that it would impact it, but I'm asking just in terms of this school conditions improvement, if we are going to get reports on that component of our district needs.
I can certainly speak to Manager Bradley with regard to that. That's not something that this particular report covers. So I can pass along that query to him and get an answer for you.
Okay, thank you. And the second component to my question is in terms of for schools that are in the core, I understand that they're not priority in terms of building, but in terms of accommodation reviews or changes of boundaries, I would just ask that we also think about the long-term strategies for schools in the core. by creating accommodation reviews or other things rather than dealing with issues at schools. We might have more students who need school buses and have more difficulty getting to school. That's all.
Thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murth. Moving on, next speaker is Trustee Lyra, and then I have Trustee Presley and Trustee Bell. Trustee Lyra.
Thank you. Question to Manager Ostapchuk. Were there any requirements on this one, the way there was a requirement on some of them in previous, that only a certain number were new, only a certain number were repeat, a certain capacity? Was there any sort of...
We were not given a limitation. Oftentimes they've said, you know, submit up to 8, submit up to 5. It wasn't given that sort of parameter. I think they've focused very much this time through on the board's performance assessment, the needs assessment for these new schools, and the significant additional information that is required to be part of each business case. Additionally, for those projects where we have childcares, we've had to go to the City of Ottawa and attempt to get their sign off on those prior to submitting them as well. So I think you're looking at a far more detailed submission for these projects. As far as limitations, we haven't gotten any. There were some priorities listed off in the original memo from the province that was shared with you, that they looked at certain criteria such as French language schools. Some of them had to do with facilities condition, but certainly accommodation pressure was their top.
Okay. So I have a question about the timeline in the Canada sites. I understand that you've been working very hard with the city and with the developers to make sure that the sites are available as soon as possible. Assuming the best world, what's the timeline that it would be before that site would be ready? And what is the timeline that we're expecting to see with regards to how long it would take for us to get approval and then get shovels in the ground where the ministry would be like, yes, we want to pick this, this, and this. I'm wondering if we might want to consider a new school as opposed to an addition to an old school, given that these things take time as it is.
Madam Chair, through you, we certainly thought of that. And we thought of not only going with an addition to Earl of March, but also a Canada High School at the same time when we don't have that site. My best estimate on when we'll be able to get shovels in the ground on a site is a little over a year from now, I assume. And that is the site that's near the Canadian Tire Center. Is that what they're calling it these days? The arena. But the Canada Highland site, I think, is a little further out, to be honest with you. I think it's more like 2 years. So given that, and given the acuity of need at Earl of March, we really thought hard about whether or not an addition and making a large school even larger was the right way to go. But I don't have a plan B. And I don't want to mislead you in saying that I do. I don't have any magic solution for 31 portables and growth in Canada up my sleeve, other than what I think is a very arguable business case to get that addition put on that school as a top priority. And I did wonder if putting in a Canada West High School, when we don't even own the site, would just muddy the waters on the first business case that I think is so required.
I have concerns. We have a couple of other really, really large high schools kicking around the district that are now sitting at 50% capacity. And I worry about creating a monster of a high school in Canada only to then open 2 other high schools and then have it sit. It's an old building. Even with a new renovation, it would have half capacity. I worry that would look bad in the future. Do you have a comment or thoughts?
When you look at Canada and look at where people think their natural divides are, they're very forthright in Canada about where their boundaries are. Because we've often looked at the Earl and wondered if the boundary should move up towards the Queensway, but Hazeldean has always been seen as the break point in that community. If that's going to continue, and with the turnover in the area, we do think that the new Canada West High School will be serving that community that kind of fills that gap between Stittsville and Canada now. So we don't know that it's the same children. We are not asking for this addition because it's a temporary thing, or I think it's going to be a very short-term need. Indeed, we want to be more responsible with the taxpayers' money than that. But given the nature of the school and where the addition would have to go, it's almost sort of a detached building attached by a breezeway sort of thing. And if at some point in the future, and I'm talking the distant future, like not my problem future kind of thing, that school was assessed to be too large, there are considerations for that sort of an addition that can come to play more so than some of the more conventionally built very large schools that we have. But for now, we think we need it, and we think we need it into the future for some time.
Okay, I can appreciate that. Last question. I heard about pressures in new growth areas in regions outside of the Greenbelt. Do we have anything on Water Ridge and the infill that is happening in that area?
We are at the moment in the process of acquisition of that property. Right now, we are watching it. It is a difficult area. You certainly have full capacity at Manor Park, as you do at Rockcliffe or thereabouts. There are some options to look at for some measures for accommodation in that area, but the need for Water Ridge, we see it probably coming in the next iteration of capital call.
Okay. So a couple of years down the road would be our ask, and then whenever the province decides to build it.
I'm hoping it's going to be more annual now than every 2 or 3 years. Again, I can't hold the province to that. They don't tell us when they're doing these things.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all of my questions.
Thank you. And I believe Trustee Presley, you did or didn't still need to be on the list.
Thank you, Chair, through you. No, my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bell then.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of the work that has gone into this over the years, and for our continued advocacy as a board. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity or a possibility, I understand that this is quite a bit of work, for us to be a bit more transparent on the needs in our schools. So I think of, for example, Elgin Street Public School in my zone, and the portables that are mounting there. How could we best share with our communities the needs, and when those possibilities or opportunities to upgrade and or expand, especially given the significant increase and projected increase in the center of the population over the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, through you, I think we have to likely have a better discussion as a board about these needs in a time where we are not pressured to put in these business cases with a timeline. I think we have to have a more measured discussion. And when it comes to the core, as always, it's complicated. But Trustee Bell's point is well taken, and I think people want an opportunity to speak to these things. One of the reasons that we came to you tonight with 4 repeats and 1 slam dunk sort of thing is just because most of these items have previously been discussed out there. But Trustee Bell's point is well taken, and we need an opportunity as a group to sit down and discuss the direction of future accommodation, not only in the core, but anywhere, in particular inside the Greenbelt, I think has to be discussed. So.
Thank you very much for that response, and I will be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Trustee Bell. Trustee Milburn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the questions I have is the repeat priority items that are on this list. How long have they actually been on it, or have we gone back to the ministry to ask for them?
Some of these have been repeated 5 times. One of them, I believe 6, AY, I believe is the 6th time it's been repeated. The ministry, we have spoken staff to staff about our needs, and we meet with them on a regular basis so that they're aware of the pressures and what sort of interim measures we can put into play. But the ministry does not explain why they approve one project over another. You will not get an explanation. It's simply funded or not funded.
Okay, it's sad to see some of them have been on 5 to 6 times, but we will keep advocating for these different priorities. Any of these priorities that are on the list, is there any concern that there'll be an increase on busing pressures, or are we too far away for that?
Any of these schools, the traditional new school that we are building in either the East Urban Community or the Riverside South School, it's we in trying to respond to the ministry's requirements for repeat designs and the submission of detailed architectural renderings. We're building in the area of either a 625 or a 676 pupil place school. It's very unlikely in either of those scenarios that the entirety of that population will be walking. We try as best we can when we're designing these sites to have them central to the community. But when you're building elementary schools now of that size, and that seems to be the, the sort of ministry requirement for what will serve a community, there's no way you're going to have all of those kids within a walk distance. And so obviously it does put more pressure to bear on busing. Absolutely. It's not it's not something to which I have a particular solution, but without building the new school within the community, I can tell you the communities are developing and the school and the children will be bused further to a school.
All right, my final remark is I am quite excited to see the new East Urban Center Elementary School alleviating pressure on both Glen O and Emily Carr, which are within my zone, and I look forward to supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other first-time speakers on my list unless I've missed somebody's hand. So I'm going to ask Trustee Presley if she would please take the chair for a moment.
Absolutely.
And thanks very much for the report. I did have a couple of questions. Certainly, we had heard our delegation this evening asking about an additional elementary school in the Stittsville area. And certainly there is concern about the extent of the overcrowding at Stittsville Public School. I'm also hearing concerns about the potential that the new high school will be fairly close to full, even when it opens, even without all of the grades in place yet. Do we have confirmation currently that the new Stittsville High School is actually going to be ready to open next September?
Through you, that is the information that I have, and I believe people are steadfast in their commitment to having that school open.
Thank you very much for that. I know that's an issue of concern. And I have to say that whenever I'm traveling around through the Stittsville area and I see the continuing growth in the Fernbank lands, I see the continuing growth at the south end of Canada, I see the roads being put in place and the beginnings of even some framing of some new houses in developments along the March Road past the Morgan's Grant area. I drive down Terry Fox and see the additional houses that are getting filled in through the Canada Highlands area and the Arcadia community closer to the Queensway. I don't travel as much in the East End or in Barrhaven, but I know that there are similar pressures there. I really do feel we need to continue to advocate very strongly for multi-year planning on the part of the ministry, because it is so hard to explain to communities that we won't get the funding for a school in a community that is clearly going to need one until basically the surrounding schools are so full that when we open the new school, it will also be full and have portables within the first year. That just doesn't seem to be right. And I think we need to continue to ask the ministry for that longer term planning so that we can in fact do a little better job of getting schools into neighborhoods in a more timely way. Because although they do mean more students, sometimes do mean more busing, they also mean that a lot of students who maybe were bused before might now be able to walk to school. And that's an important thing, as we heard from our delegation this evening. I will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Pass you back the chair.
And I have Suzanne Lyon for the Parent Involvement Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I apologize, I'm not in a position to turn my camera on at the moment. My question has to do also with portables, and if a new school in Riverside South is built, will this alleviate some pressures on, for example, Maryvale High School, which I drive past on a regular basis? It's in my zone, as Trustee Presley knows, and there are a lot of portables there. I think there were 11 or 12 on the football field, another 6 on the Maryvale roadside. So were those, I guess, to Ms. Ostvachuk, through you, Chair, were those kinds of issues considered in putting forward these priorities in terms of alleviating pressures on some other schools? Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, I think through previous accommodation reviews, I believe the questioner has some experience with this. We always try and consider this in everything we do. When you're talking specifically about Maryville High School, the real alleviation of pressure from Maryville High School will come with the opening of the Riverside South High School, which has recently been approved, the boundary for which has recently been approved. So that's where you're going to find the alleviation of pressure there. For the next Riverside South Elementary School, we are, like with Stittsville, like in Canada, like with the East Urban community, we're trying to get out ahead of some of the development pressures that we see happening within that community now as it is built. So Maryville is taken care of already with a previous funding of the high school. And Riverside South Elementary School is really to preclude overcrowding continuing at Steve McLean, which is the only elementary school in the area.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And a question from Tom Holloway.
Yeah, I had a question through Madam Chair. Just in terms of, as these plans are put forth, I'm thinking about Earl in particular, but certainly in addition to AY Jackson as well too. With regards to athletic facilities, I mean, I see, certainly as an Earl March parent, the need for that extra space. But one concern, with these additions is that you create a large high school, but not make, certain accommodations on the sports field side, so that given a higher school population, a greater need for taking advantage of sports fields that are out there too. And I guess I want to make sure that that's also being considered as part of any proposal that's being put forward.
I think, Madam Chair, I heard that. I was having a bit of difficulty, but with regard to, I'll speak to specifics of the first 2 priority projects. With regard to the Earl, we were mindful of the recent addition to accommodate the elementary students and the gym space that was put on then. And so we have in this and trying to temper the need for expansion at that school by just accommodating with classrooms. We have really focused on classroom and washroom additions to the school. If there is need for any renovation to existing field areas, we've tried not to get into those overly much, but there is the renewal fund that is separate and distinct. We don't think that we are concerned with overbuilding Earl of March, and so have focused on classrooms and alleviating the pressure from portables. When it comes to AY is a school that is rather compact to begin with, and the addition that we have proposed there also includes gym facilities, other facilities other than classrooms, which the school is lacking. Not to get into its overall footprint too much, so the outdoor space will remain.
Mr. Holloway? Anything further?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you. And I think that brings me to the end of my speakers list. So I am back to Trustee Aziz for wrap up.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just briefly share a conversation I had with our wonderful students at Earl of March last week. I had the opportunity to hear about the things they're really happy about within their time at school, and some things that they're hoping for in the future for our next generation of Earl of March students. And it's for more space outside and closer access to the bathroom, especially in the winter. And I think an addition, should it be approved, could have that opportunity. And so I implore my colleagues to consider the needs of our students and voting in favor of this recommendation. And again, thank you to staff for bringing this to us in a timely manner. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And that brings us to the vote, and we just need a show of hands vote. So I will call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? And opposed? And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And that brings us to item 8.2. And for this motion, I'm going to ask Trustee Presley if she would please take the chair, and I will just trade places with her. Actually makes things a little simpler.
Big deal. Thank you, Trustee Scott, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We have the opportunity under the provincial regulation to have up to 3 student trustees. Right now, we have 2 student trustees. And one of the things that is a possibility would be to add a 3rd student trustee. And this might be also an opportunity to ensure that we would have Indigenous representation at the board table on a consistent basis. In research that I undertook together with Manager Nicole Guthrie and Superintendent Reg Laverne last year, looking at student trustees and how the regulation was being applied in multiple school boards across the province. One of the things I found was that there were at least a dozen public school boards, English public school boards, that did have a position for an Indigenous student trustee, including 3 of those English public boards that did not have an Indigenous board member, but they nonetheless were able to have an Indigenous student trustee. I really think that it would be well received by the Indigenous Education Council, with whom I discussed the draft motion at their last meeting in September. And therefore, I would like to move that the position of Indigenous student trustee be created to take office effective 1 August 2024, that the Indigenous student trustee be elected directly by students identifying as Indigenous, that the Indigenous Education Council be involved in developing the necessary revisions to policy P.017.gov student trustees and any other relevant policies and procedures. And finally, that current student trustees, the Student Senate, and Indigenous students be consulted.
Thank you for that, Trustee Scott. I would like to call for a mover of this motion.
I moved it.
Okay, so just for the record, moved by Trustee Scott. We have a growing speakers list. Trustee Aziz.
Sorry, Trustee Scott, was that your opening remarks? Okay, double checking. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I'd like to express my gratitude to Trustee Scott for bringing forth this motion. I think this is a fantastic idea and well overdue, and would like to express my support for this motion. And the highlighted points regarding consultation with our student trustees, student senate, Indigenous students, and working with the Indigenous Education Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Next on our list, we have Trustee Lyra.
Thanks.
Oh, so sorry. Oh, on the list, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
So I'm going to start by saying that I think this is a great idea. I am happy to support this motion. I do have some logistical questions that I'm going to sort of poke staff with. If this were to pass, how would staff plan to actionalize this motion when it comes to finding students who identify as Indigenous and ensuring that they get a chance to either choose to stand as a student trustee or vote for a student trustee?
Director.
Through you, Madam Chair, I do appreciate the chair's perspective here. When I look at the actual motion in section B around linking or connecting directly with students who identify as Indigenous, I'll turn over momentarily to Superintendent Smith for a perspective on that and how we might go about operationalizing that particular element of the, as well as all four of the particular motions. But that one does raise how we would go about doing. I'll seek Superintendent Smith's perspective, but all to say, I think staff would in earnest look for a way to put that into action in some capacity, but I'll turn it over to our superintendent for perspective.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. In terms of operationalizing it, we would have to rely on students themselves to identify. And I believe that we would have to develop a process for that to take place, either as part of the nomination and all of those processes or in advance. But it would be important for us to rely on the student self-identification.
Anything further?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, self-identification can be a tough thing for an individual. And I'm wondering how we're going to ensure that students have their voice heard without outing themselves if they don't feel comfortable outing themselves to the entire student body, for example. I guess I'm wondering how we're going to balance the right to self-identification with concerns around self-identifying.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you. I think what we'll commit to doing as staff is work through the Indigenous Education Council, talk about the ways in which we can balance those perspectives. I understand that the point that Trustee Evans is making here in terms of students who may not self-identify readily and yet want to have a voice in the selection of this individual. We'll work through the IEC to find a respectful, suitable manner in which we can bring this to fruition prior to August. What I appreciate from Trustee Scott is being brought forward in a timely manner that we can have those conversations, figure out a process that's as respectful as it can be and as inclusive as possible, and I'm sure come to the determination of a student trustee that would satisfy that the spirit of the motion being brought forward.
So I now have a question to the mover, and that is it the intention of the mover that students who vote for the Indigenous student trustee not then vote in the general student trustee elections?
Trustee Scott.
At present, students do not vote directly for our student trustees. What happens in each school is that there is a student trustee candidate who is chosen within the school, and then the choice of student trustee is made by a combination of the student senate and the student president's council. In terms of the Indigenous student trustee position, other boards are doing this as a direct election, which means that they are doing it online. For example, a number of districts that are doing this kind of thing are inviting applications, are then posting those applications on a special web page and relaying the information and the links to the students that have identified as Indigenous. If a student identifies as Indigenous, they don't have to tell the whole school community. They just have to let staff know, basically, so they are not necessarily outed for that. In terms of whether or not those students would have 2 votes, I think that's something that would have to be decided, and that's one of the reasons for consultation with the Indigenous Education Council and with the student trustees and the student senate and the Indigenous students themselves, because certainly right now there are some places where people actually do get to vote in 2 different things that overlap. There are other places where they don't, and I think that's something that would have to be worked out in the policy.
Okay, thank you. I was aware they didn't elect directly, but it was the question about 2 votes. Those were my questions. I'm happy to support the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Lara. Next on our speakers list is, myself. Trustee Scott, may I pass it back to Chair? So I am very fortunate to be one of the members on the Indigenous Education Council, and this is something that has been in talks for quite a while, and I'm very thankful to Trustee Scott for bringing this forward in such an inclusive way. I'm very happy to support it, and I look forward to the support of my colleagues as well.
Chair, back to you.
Thank you very much. Next on our list, we have Trustee Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lynn, for bringing this forward. Like Amanda said, it's been a long time coming, and we've talked about this a lot, and I definitely will be supporting this. Thank you for bringing it forward again.
Thank you, Trustee Dixon. Next on our list, we have Trustee Kaplan-Murphy.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I also will absolutely support this. My question is whether there's a reason that we have to delay an Indigenous student taking office until August 1st of 2024. That means that this entire academic year will go by, another year without an Indigenous trustee. Is it not possible to have an Indigenous trustee elected before that?
I'll look to staff for comment.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it's a reasonable question that's being brought forward. I did speak in advance of the motion coming forward to Trustee Scott. There are some process pieces that we want to respect in terms of the Indigenous Education Council and their advice, perspective on the process to ensure we don't negate voices that need to be heard. I think the bringing forward of the motion at this point in the school year gives us time to do that, to ensure those pieces are in place, including whether it's a single vote or a double vote in some capacity, which wasn't an element I had thought about previously to the conversation I'm hearing this evening. Had given some thought to how we would engage our Indigenous our students of Indigenous students more fully. So that was the reason this was brought this soon, so that we would be in good place, on top of the fact that the onboarding for a student trustee does take some time. We want to make sure we do it properly and do it at a point in the year, starting into a new school year, that would be respectful of that particular individual, whomever it may be. So this was to give it enough time to move forward, but appreciate the comment. We think it'll take some time to sort this through properly. Don't want to misstep on this and set the individual up for success for what looks to be like an exciting addition to our student voice and leadership.
Thank you, Director. I believe Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, Trustee Scott wanted to provide some additional information for our benefit.
Yes, thank you. There are some specific timelines. For example, the regulation for student trustees requires that if you are electing student trustees for a one-year term, the elections have to be completed by the 28th of February. So that means that we have until now, until the end of February, to get this all sorted and go ahead with an election process. Then the regulation also specifies that the term of office for a student trustee begins on the 1st of August. So by doing that election, if we can get it ready by this winter, then we would have a student trustee eligible to take office for the following school year. Couldn't do it any faster, unfortunately.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. I was sure there was a reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Trustee Kaplan-Meier. Next on our list, we have Trustee Bell. When you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I've noticed that Lily Miller, our representative from IEC, also has her hand up, and Suzanne Lyon. Can I go on to the end of the speakers list first time, please?
Thank you very much for that, Trustee Bell. I'd be happy to move you along. So next on our list, we have Lily Miller, representative from the Indigenous Education Council. Lily, whenever you're ready.
Hi there. Thank you. Thank you for that, Justine. And thank you, Lyra, for bringing up about outing a person who is Indigenous and is not yet ready to share that, and how, you know, just highlighting that it's still not a safe place for a lot of Indigenous students, which is why one of the reasons why it's so important to have those voices at the table. And especially a student voice, and getting centering their voices is so important. As you know, if we look at the strategic plan, you know, we see that you know, we want to work towards reconciliation, and part of that is hearing, listening, and then taking action wherever possible. And this is a great way to take action, and getting more voices at the table. So I also wanted to just remind everyone that in 2021, the board voted in favor of sending a letter to the ministry about getting an Indigenous trustee, urban Indigenous trustee. And I wonder if the board has heard anything back from the ministry on that.
Thank you, Lily. I'm going to pass it over to Trustee Lyra for comment on that.
So that letter was written. We have received no response to date.
Thank you for that response. Anything further, Lily?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your insights. Next on our list, we have Trustee Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is an excellent opportunity, and it definitely will be in support of the motion. I just want to clarify with staff, as my understanding from looking through the GSN's technical paper, that 3 student trustees are funded. However, based on our policies and procedures, the funding for student trustees exceeds the funding that's given by the ministry in the GSN. So can the staff comment on the budgetary impact of this motion?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not certain of the details. I appreciate Trustee Lee's comment. I'll turn it over to either Superintendent Smith or Associate Director Giroir if there's any comment on that, or we can look into this and get back to the trustee if it's not immediately. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So I think I'm not familiar with the exact funding model for trustees, but I do think that I'll look into that piece of it. But even if the GSN doesn't specifically fund it, I think I can work with my partner, Superintendent Smith, and using Indigenous funds as a source of funding if we can't find other funds within the district. But I can't imagine that this financial pressure would be something that we couldn't find a way to cover.
Perfect. That was all. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Lee. Next, we have Suzanne Lyon from the Parent Involvement Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I think it's wonderful that Trustee Scott has brought this motion forward, particularly as it comes just a few days after the observance of the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, which was just on the 30th of September. And as a retiree from the Department of Indigenous Affairs and Northern Development, whatever it's called now, I doubly support this idea. I had a question in terms of point B and self-identification, and am reminded of the report that we received some time ago about suspensions. And I wish that Dr. Rahim were here to talk to us, but perhaps there would be an opportunity, because there is self-identification data lacking there as well, to expand the scope of the self-identification project so that, you know, more data can be collected that would be useful in a variety of situations. Yeah, that was my thought. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyon, for that. I'm going to pass it over to Superintendent Smith for comment.
So comment regarding, sorry, Chair, the Indigenous self-identification process. So through you, Chair, as the members of this committee will know, the Indigenous self-identification policy of the district is up for revision. The IAC is taking a lead role in that work. In fact, Ms. Miller was working on that earlier this evening. And so I anticipate that, and this is a confidential process. I should have mentioned that when Trustee Lyra asked her question, that however the self-identification works for this process, it will be a confidential process as well. So we will be bringing forward to the Ad Hoc Policy Review Committee revisions for the February meeting.
Thank you, Superintendent. Sorry, go ahead, Suzanne. Anything further?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. So I guess my question was more about, can the board, given that they're going to do some work on self-identification of Indigenous students, expand that work to capture self-identification of other groups so that the board has more complete data? And if you're going to be doing some work on the Indigenous self-identification, could it be sort of expanded given the lack of self-identification data that the board had mentioned in a previous discussion? Thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to pass this over to the director.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Appreciate the comment, and staff will definitely take that under advisement. Appreciate the nature of the comment being made.
Thank you.
Anything further, Ms. Lyon?
That's all, Ms. Presley. Thank you very much.
All right, and now we have Trustee Bell as our final first-time speaker. Thank you very much again, Trustee Bell, for volunteering to cede your time to look a little bit further. You may go ahead whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you very much. And through you, Chair, it works out quite well, because my question, instead of potentially bringing forth another component to this motion, I'm hoping that my colleagues around the table will support me in bringing forth a request that we send a follow-up letter to the ministry to request, again, permission to have an Indigenous trustee at our board. In 2021, it was unanimously approved that a letter be sent by everyone around the table. There was great conversation about why it is important to have an Indigenous trustee there, and I think it only will complement a student trustee, given that Ottawa, I think it's been said before, is really a hub for for many, many nations when it comes to our schools. With that, Chair, would it be possible, I can't see everyone, but can we get a nod or a thumbs up or to the request to send a follow-up letter on Indigenous trust, on an Indigenous trustee, permission to have an Indigenous trustee? Thank you.
Thank you, Belle. I'm sure that wouldn't be an issue. However, I'll pass that over to Trustee Lyer for comment.
I'd be happy to write a letter to that effect, but I think we could add that to an agenda and make sure that the board passes it as an item so that we have the full weight of the board. And it's not just a letter from me, it's a letter on behalf of the whole board. So I'll add that to one of our forthcoming agendas so that we can debate it properly, have the motion be in time, and that the letter will carry the full weight of the board asking yet again. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Lyer. Anything further, Trustee Bell?
Just my gratitude to Trustee Scott and the Indigenous Education Council for all of their support for our board. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I apologize, colleagues. I fibbed a little bit. I also have student trustee Emma Hong who would like to provide comment as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I think on behalf of both me and Malika, we'd like to express our deep support for this motion. It's definitely overdue, and we've seen our peers have really big successes in this position. For instance, at the TDSB, where student trustees or Indigenous student trustees were able to advocate for changes to the curriculum. And another note that hasn't been previously mentioned is that I think implementing this role will allow Ottawa's Indigenous student community to have a voice at the provincial level as well. As right now, none of us are, I think historically we haven't been on OCDSB's Indigenous communities or in that leadership role. So this will allow our students to have that position. And I had a little question about the Resolution B. So what would be the impact of not having an exclusively Indigenous voter base? Because I know that there have been a lot of concerns about self-identification. And I think like with the election process right now, we don't have the student leadership structures to support the election of an Indigenous student trustee by Indigenous students within student leadership. But again, everything can change. So yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Hong. I'll pass it over to the director for comment.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I think it's an interesting perspective. I guess I'll open it up to some of staff that'd like to comment. What comes to mind initially for me is my only concern there would be that the voice of our Indigenous students gets completely overwhelmed in sheer numbers by a broader population and just a concern, and not that the broader population couldn't make a wise choice. I don't want to suggest that, but I understand the spirit of item B here in the motion that really honors and reflects the Indigenous voice. That would be my only concern, although I appreciate that our numbers for students who self-identify may not tell the whole tale. I just worry that a broader group could almost skew the kind of perspective that our Indigenous students in particular might have. But again, I'll open it up to any of staff who may have a comment. Superintendent Smith, perhaps you have a very reasoned and seasoned perspective here.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. You raised some really good points. I think that it's very important for us to ensure that Indigenous students have their voices heard. And as Director Buffoni mentioned, there is a potential for that to not happen if it was open to the broader group. When we had this discussion at the IEC, there was strong support for ensuring that the individuals who were putting themselves forward for the position and voting for the position would identify as Indigenous. And the piece that you mentioned about the structures, that is something that we'll definitely have to bring to the table when we're thinking our way through how to make this, how to maintain the integrity of the process. Thank you.
Go ahead. Sorry. Also, another kind of separate question, but how would the responsibilities of the Indigenous student trustees differ from our responsibilities currently?
I'll pass it over to Superintendent Smith for comment.
I'm so sorry, I missed the question. If I could ask the student trustee to repeat.
How would the responsibilities of the Indigenous student trustee differ from our current responsibilities?
Through you, Chair, that is an excellent question. And again, I think we'll have to work through that as we're operationalizing. I am not as familiar as I should be with the current responsibilities, but we'll definitely review and give some consideration to what that will look like.
Anything further, Trustee Hong? Thank you. Excellent. Trustee Scott, would you like wrap up?
Thank you very much. It's gratifying to hear the level of support around the table for this idea. I really do think it is time for us to do this. Indeed, some of us might think it is overdue, but if we don't get started now, we have a number of issues that will require to be worked out. In terms of the role of the student trustees, an Indigenous student trustee in any other board has very much the same role and responsibilities as the non-Indigenous student trustees do, in terms of expectation to be attending meetings, to bring the voice of the students that they represent to the board table and to the board's committees, and to participate in the professional learning that goes along with the role, to participate in OSTA ACO, all of those things with a specific mission of bringing that Indigenous voice forward. And I think that's perhaps the most important part. In the past, this board has had an Indigenous board member who was elected in the general election, who really did a wonderful job as a trustee. However, that individual was not elected as a representative of Indigenous people. She was elected to be the representative of a whole bunch of people in the zone where she was elected. And I've never felt that it was fair to expect somebody who was belonging to a particular group to be the representative of that particular group all the time within the context of the board, where each of us is representing everybody who is part of our own zones. Similarly, we have in the past had an Indigenous student trustee who was a student trustee who happened to be Indigenous, again, elected by the broad population, did a great job, very, very powerful voice for students. But again, it was an issue of this was a student trustee who was there to represent all of the student voices specifically, as opposed to necessarily being the one who was chosen explicitly to represent the Indigenous voice. And I think that's a really important thing, because too often when we apply labels to people and say, okay, you belong to this group or that group, and we expect anyone who belongs to that group to represent the whole group, when in fact people may not wish to represent a group. They may wish to represent everybody, or they may wish to represent only themselves. So I think it's really important to create this position, because this is a voice we have not heard enough from in this boardroom. And I hope that everyone will be supporting this recommendation tonight.
Thank you, Trustee Scott. Thank you for all of your work. This will be a simple show of hands for this vote. I will now ask all those in favor. All right, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I will pass the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Presley. That brings us on to item 9, reports from statutory committees, beginning with item 9.1, the Parent Involvement Committee from, let me find the date here. May the 10th. And do we have a mover for that? Trustee Nash, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions in that report? And seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor and opposed, and that motion is carried. Next up, we have the Indigenous Education Committee from the 18th of May. And again, do we have a mover for that? Trustee Dixon, thank you. And are there any errors or omissions in that report? Seeing none, all those in favor of receipt and opposed, that is carried. We next have the Audit Committee report, and this one does have some recommendations in it. So let us begin with the getting receipt moved. Trustee Lee, thank you. And are there any errors or omissions in the report? Seeing none, on receipt, all those in favor and opposed, and that motion is carried. And we have within that report, first of all, the recommendation that KPMG LLP's plan for the audit of the 2022-2023 consolidated financial statements be approved. And I believe that Trustee Lee was the mover of that recommendation in committee. So is there any discussion on that, or shall we simply proceed to the vote? I'll call the question then on that motion by Trustee Lee. All those in favor of the recommendation and opposed, and the next and that motion is carried. And the next item from the Audit Committee is I think a motion by Trustee Milburn, and that the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board Audit Committee, one, receives for information the 2023-2024 annual report on internal audit activities, and two, approves the 2023-2024 regional internal audit team charter. So any debate, any introduction on that one? I'll call the question then. All those in favor of that recommendation and opposed, and that motion is carried. And finally, we have approval of the 2023-24 regional internal audit plan. And I think which is simply that the 2023-2024 regional internal audit plan be approved. And I think, was that you, Trustee Lee, again? Any discussion on this? Call the question then. All those in favor of the recommendation and opposed, and that motion is carried. And I think that is all the recommendations from that report, which brings us to item 10. Matters for discussion, and this is the student transportation update, and I look to the director to introduce.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to Associate Director Gerrois for a brief update on transportation matters.
Through you, Chair. I would like to start by continuing to acknowledge all the hard work that the OSTA team is doing to resolve the transportation issues that both OCDSB and OCSB are facing. I think it's important that we acknowledge their efforts because I know there's a lot of negative publicity around the shortages, but they are working very hard and they've inherited some of these problems because they are problems that are happening with the third-party vendors but people tend to blame them. I will want to say that they're attacking the problem from both supply and demand. And when I say supply and demand, I mean making sure that we get more runs on. So that's supply, getting more. They got 94 new runs that have been reinstated, and they continue to work on getting new drivers trained and back into the system to increase the number of runs. And then on the demand side, they're also working with both boards in finding those students that are eligible but don't need the transportation, so they can open those seats up for other students who desperately need those spots. So they are doing everything that they can. They heard the community's comments that the communication hasn't been all that the community was expecting. So they have hired a communication firm to assist them in trying to get the message out of the things that they are doing. The operational review has started, the third-party review being funded by the ministry. That started over the last couple of days. I had a meeting today with Deloitte and we went through some of the criteria and documentations that they need, and they were asking us questions about some of the processes and procedures and governance that are in place. And I'd also like to add that both myself and my counterpart at OCSB will be actually visiting OSTA tomorrow to kind of talk to the staffs, get a gauge of the morale, show our support, and continue to find ways to try to make this situation better. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much for that update. I have Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Associate Director Giroir, for your update. Just one question, if we could get clarity. You mentioned the 94 runs, but is that not just one direction? That's not dropping off in the morning and then returning at the end of the day? That's just 94 runs in one direction?
Through you, Chair, that's exactly the way they manage the runs. It's in one direction, which is why you have some students who have transportation to school but not back, or back but not to school. So that is the way that they manage it. That's also a moving target because as previously mentioned in one of my earlier updates, September is probably one of the most chaotic months for OSTA in general, as all these new bus drivers show up and take on these new responsibilities, and then a lot of them decide that maybe it wasn't the job that they thought it was and do quit. So it is so the fact that they've actually managed to establish 94 new runs is significant accomplishment based on the turmoil that the system faces in the first month. But yes, it is 94 runs one way.
Thank you, that's all.
And I don't have any other questioners on my list, but I would like to ask Trustee Presley if she could take the chair for a moment. Just to ask very quickly, in terms of the driver availability, I know that there are some provincial supports to help to attract and retain drivers, including a retention bonus. Do we have any information on whether those retention bonuses are still being provided to all of the drivers, even if they're driving a van as opposed to a yellow bus?
Through you, Chair, sorry. So the driver retention bonus is not being provided to the small vehicle drivers, but that is not where we tend to have the pressure and the shortages. It's in the Class G yellow bus drivers, or the Class G drivers. So that answer your question?
That answers my question. I'm disappointed with that because the van drivers typically are transporting very high needs students who require a lot of extra special care and attention. And it just seems to me reasonable that they should also be encouraged to stay in their roles, particularly because that gives some consistency to some of those high needs students. Second question is with regard to the expectation of when things are going to happen. I have to say that within my own zone, there were 68 routes where there were cancellations, and I'm talking routes, not runs. So a lot of those were counted as 2 runs at the beginning of September. I am delighted with the progress that has been made so far by OSTA staff, that more than half of those routes have now been restored. But the fact remains that there are still 32 of those 68 routes that are not restored, and particularly to schools like South Carleton High School, which still has 11 routes not working, and Cars on the Rideau, which has 3 or 4 routes not working. These are rural students. These families have been driving their children to school daily, and then trying to go and get a few hours of work before they have to come back and pick their students up at school again to get them home. This is just so unfair to rural parents. Is there anything that can be done at all to expedite getting some of those routes restored?
Through you, Chair. So those routes are the priority routes to try to find solutions for. But I'm going to be honest, the reality is those are also the toughest routes to find solutions for, because with the pulling out of Premier in servicing that area, there's only one other operator that services some of that other area. And so the option space for finding new yellow buses to service those students is very limited. And I don't know how that changes realistically in the short term. That's a problem that we need to work with the third party review to highlight the challenges of lowering a new entrant into that market. We are trying to put an RFI out. I don't know if the RFI is on the street yet or not, but to see if we could find somebody who would be interested in servicing those areas that has not expressed interest in that before. We're also looking at vendors that are servicing routes in areas outside of our district, like in Renfrew, that are close to that area, that may be able to expand their service into that area. One of the other solutions was seeing if we could purchase some buses to service those areas ourselves. We are absolutely looking at new ways of solving this problem that haven't been explored in the past, but those solutions do take time to come to fruition. So I can't give you a reasonable timeline on or which one of those solutions will come to fruition. I think we also have to consider what is sustainable for the entire transportation sector. Like we could potentially raise the rates for that service area, but then how does that impact the service rates for all the other yellow bus routes across the district? So we need not only a viable solution to transport those students, but we need a sustainable model for the future too. We can't just solve the problem short terming and create a longer term problem for the other transportation components within the district. So like I said, it's not a quick fix. Any solution is going to require thought and full investigation before it can be implemented, which is, I think, why we're looking at so many different types of solutions to see which one will best meet the needs of that community on a more consistent long-term basis.
Thank you very much for that. I think that many patients have been incredibly patient here, but they have been patient now for a month. They are incurring huge expense to get their children to school. And it's not a matter of, it's a handful of students. We are talking literally hundreds of students whose families are in this situation. So I really appreciate the progress that has been made, but we really need some relief for families. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Scott. I'm sure everyone here around the table feels similarly and thanks you for your comments as you raised them very well. I will now pass you back the chair.
Thank you. And I have Trustee Aziz and then Ms. Lyon.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I'd like to thank Associate Director Giroir for his comments. I'd like to thank Trustee Lee for providing regular updates to the board regarding progress OSTA has made on reinstating routes, and thank the Director of Education. To me, it sounds like everyone at this table and beyond has been working their behind off to make sure that our students are getting to schools to make the much anticipated achievements of the new school year. And OSTA has also been working diligently on developing solutions, but it sounds like this is a problem that cannot be adequately solved with all the hard work that is being put forth at the board level and all the hard work that's being put at the OSTA level. I look forward to those with more leeway to make sure that next year we don't have to wait months and months and weeks for solutions to making sure that our students are in classrooms as we've been promised to learn, to work with their peers, and again, grateful for the work that is being done around the table. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Aziz and Ms. Lyon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I have heard from parents that it's distressing, obviously, to not be able to count on a bus to get your child to school. It does make it difficult to encourage parent involvement when your main concern is getting your child or children to school and home and try to maintain your employment. And there are some families whose children are missing school, quite frankly. So I would be interested in knowing the scope of the third-party review, and if that review can also look at things like the empty seat program, which I assume, given comments made at this table, that it's not going to be reconsidered or reinstated this year, and that's not an option. So in the third-party review, and to echo Trustee Aziz, could we look at solutions going forward where families are not in this position again next year? And particularly for the empty seat program, I would be interested in knowing how many children actually rely on that program, and if there's a way to better manage it. And perhaps that could be looked at in the third-party review. Thank you very much. That's it.
Is there any response from staff for that, or is that going to be taken into consideration?
Through you, Chair, they are looking at OSTA operations. They haven't specifically identified the empty seat policy for review. I think that just with my short period of time talking to them today, I don't see them focusing on that area specifically, because that's not going to solve some of the short, medium, and long-term problems we're having providing supply in some of the rural areas. But what will happen is, if we can get some stability in the overall OSTA transportation model, then we as a OSTA board can bring back the empty seat program. We want to bring that program back and offer those empty seats to those that need them. And it only helps parents and that, you know, in the community. But the problem is that if you're looking at trying to find ways to take buses that are 1/3 full or 2/3 full and move those students onto other buses so you can free that bus up for a route somewhere else, it doesn't help to all of a sudden then offer those 1/3 or 2/3 empty seats to other families and make that bus fuller than it should be so that you can't utilize it for a need somewhere else. So it's a little bit counterproductive to the problems that we're trying to solve now. But once we get a bit more stability with the transportation model writ large, then we absolutely will bring those kind of programs back. And to be honest with you, right now, if there is a student who sees a bus that drives by their home that has vacant seats, they should bring that to their school principal put in for a request for exception, because by exception, they will review need, and if they can accommodate, they will accommodate that. Even though we're not actively promoting and actively doing the empty seat program, we are still absolutely meeting the needs of our community when they self-identify as a priority for a good reason. So I encourage you to, if families do reach out to you, to make sure that the school principals are aware of your need, and they are and will be prioritized and accommodated where they can be.
Thank you very much.
And next I have Trustee Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through you. So we were given emergency funding, and we still find ourselves in this situation. So I guess my question is there being pressure put on the ministry to admit that we simply aren't funded enough to meet our transportation needs? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Through you, Chair. Part of the reason why we have the third-party review is because we've expressed our concerns with the new funding model and where it doesn't support our needs, in particular vans, small vehicles. There was no acknowledgement that or funding for them, and we were expected to use what they called local priorities to support that piece. And it's because we're one of the largest users of small vehicles or vans in the entire province. I think we're very much an outlier in the sense that most other school boards use like 7 to 11% or something like that, and we're well into the 50% range with our small vehicle transportation. I think there's a lot of good reasons why our board OSTA has used those small vehicles, particularly when you look at our Class G driver shortage for yellows. It wouldn't make sense to put more demand on smaller yellow buses to accommodate those same needs, because we can't find Class G drivers to drive our large yellow buses. So why would we have a different model than we do now, right? It may work in Toronto, it may work in Durham, but it doesn't work here in Ottawa under the current constraints that we have in our market. But that's what hopefully this third-party review will show. And I've specifically detailed some of these concerns because what I didn't want to happen was I didn't want Deloitte to come down and say, well, you should have more small buses to service your special needs students or whatever, and then go away and then not realize that that's not even a feasible option for us given the current constraints of this local market. And so they seem to be listening and hearing our concerns. We'll see what happens when they finally do produce a formal report, but it's not in the ministry's best interest to not find ways to help us solve this transportation problem, because it doesn't go away for them either, right? This needs to be addressed. And whether it's a funding issue or a model issue or the way we do routing or whatever recommendations come out of this report, we're all very excited to find to take the best ideas or the best practices and find ways to provide the most transportation within the resources that are allocated to us. And if the resources that are allocated to us are not enough, then we will continue to fight for additional resources to provide those services.
Thank you very much for that. And Trustee Kaplan-Murth, and we're almost at the end of our agenda. And I'm hoping to stave off having a break if we don't take too long to finish it.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Chair. My comment more than question actually picks up on something that Trustee Scott mentioned earlier in terms of our concerns that the students with special needs and those small vans get forgotten in the fray. But I've heard from parents who are concerned for many reasons, but one of them is, as one parent said, that they really don't feel that they have any explanation for how the system is supposed to work. And so I would hope that in the future we provide more clarity to families in terms of how the system is supposed to work. One of the issues that they raise is that the quality training of drivers, particularly for students with special needs, is paramount. And so I know that we are desperate to find more drivers of buses, but also for those students who take the small vans and for students with special needs, we need to ensure that there is some quality control and training of these adults who are driving our most precious cargo, our children, from school to home and so on. So I just wanted to reiterate that it's not just a matter of supply and demand and just finding people, but also making sure that that we are finding people and we can assure families that there is quality and training and that there's a system in place for them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murth. And that brings me to the end of the speakers list. And I would like to say thank you very much, Aidé Giroir, for your presentation and for answering our questions. Moving on then, report from OPSPA item 11.1. Do we have one, Trustee Jenkins?
No report this evening.
And the OSTA update 11.2, Trustee Lee?
I think the Associate Director has given a very thorough update.
Thank you very much. Is there any new business? And I'm not seeing any hands raised around the table. So I would like to thank everyone for a good discussion. We've reached the end of our agenda. I will declare the meeting adjourned, and I expect we'll be taking about a 5-minute break before we start our special board.
Yeah, let's say 25 after, which is 8 minutes.
Sorry?
25 after, so
Oh,
8 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So 25 after.
We're waiting on you. All right, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. And that really has quite a crack to it. We're going to start by looking for a mover for the agenda. I see Trustee Aziz, seconded by Trustee Milburn. Are there any changes or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, all those, oh, is that a hand? No. All those in favor of the agenda as presented? And that carries. Are there any potential declarations of interest? Seeing none, moving along to matters for action. I'm going to look to Trustee Scott to provide the report from the COW meeting we just had. I'm going to give Trustee Scott a minute to get things ready. Trustee Scott.
And thank you, Madam Chair. The board met in committee of the whole earlier this evening and reports and recommends as follows. On a motion by Trustee Aziz that the following capital priorities be submitted to the Ministry of Education in response to the 2023-2024 capital call. An addition to Earl of March High School, an addition to A.Y. Jackson Secondary School, an addition to Viscount Alexander Public School, a new elementary school in the East Urban community, and a new elementary school in Riverside South.
Thank you, Trustee Scott. We have had our debate and this passed unanimously. So I'm going to ask, is this a consent item? If it is not, please speak up. Hearing no objection, I'm going to ask Manager Guthrie to please open the vote. If you do not have eScribe, please feel free to vote by voice. Thank you, Manager Guthrie. And that passes unanimously. 12 in favor, none opposed. As seen on the screen in a moment, momentarily, or not. 12 in favor, none opposed, none abstentions, none absent. I'm going to move to report item 5.2, report 23-072, and I'm going to call on Director Buffoni to introduce it.
Through you, Madam Chair, just bringing forward the report from earlier today that was brought with respect to, apologies, I will get around the Strike Management Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair, for that item that was brought forward in preparation for any potential labor action that may or may not transpire. So I wanted to bring that forward to the board for their approval.
All right, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. I see Trustee Kaplan-Murth, seconded by Trustee Dixon, that the board invoke the provisions of section 8.6 of the board's bylaws and standing rules regarding the calling of extraordinary meetings of the board for the purpose of dealing with issues related to collective bargaining for the period of the 26th of September 2023 to the 31st of December 2023. So we have a mover. We are going to have, assuming this, we're going to have an election. So I'm going to open the floor. I see Trustee Aziz.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I'd like to nominate Trustee Bell for the Strike Management Committee.
Okay. Trustee Bell, do you accept?
I do.
All right. And I assume you second yourself. Do we have any other nominations for the Strike Management Committee? I see Trustee Dixon. Okay. You did nominate Trustee Jenkins. Trustee Jenkins, do you accept? I assume you nominate, or you second yourself. Do we have any other nominations for the Strike Management Committee? Seeing no other, I see Trustee Scott.
I will move to close nominations.
All right, all in favor of closing nominations?
Need a seconder for that?
We do. Trustee Milburn, all in favor of closing nominations? And that passes. All right. We have a vote.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Blackburn, we have an election.
yeah, Okay.
Manager Guthrie? We have an election.
yes, and my e-scribe is closed. So do I text, do I text Manager Guthrie?
Yeah, you're gonna have to text Manager Guthrie. Everyone else is gonna get a paper ballot.
Thank you.
Lyra, can you just explain, are we voting for who we want as first?
Okay, so to clarify, we are voting for one person. Everyone. We are voting for one person, the person you want to be the primary representative to the Strike Management Committee. No. The second person does not automatically become the alternate. We will need to have a second set of nominations for the alternate. Okay.
I would also like to be able to vote if possible. Just looking for Nicole's phone number.
Well, I'm not going to read that out.
She just texted me, I responded.
Okay. So she has texted you. You should be able to respond. It's cards. We clearly don't hold enough internal elections.
Point of order, can I nominate someone to pull a card for me?
You're gonna have to.
Trustee Aziz, who nominated me, if she could pull the card,
Trustee
that'd be
Aziz, do
great.
you accept? Yes, you do. Okay. All right, everyone. We have not had a conclusive result, which as according to our policy, we vote again. Should this result in a tie, we will cut cards. High card will retain the position. To the folks online, if you would once again, please text Manager Guthrie. Thank you. A reminder, while I have everyone's attention, that we're going to sit tight. A reminder that at the end of the meeting, we're going to sit tight for 5 to 10 minutes until we can clear the audience, and it's great for everyone to leave. Thank you.
Point of order.
An audience.
Point of order. You seem to have cut out. Is this the vote
No.
for the representative?
This is a vote for the we've been voting on the representative. I was reminding people in the room that our new security procedures ask us to sit tight for 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the meeting.
And we have yet to vote for the alternate.
We have yet to vote for the alternate. All right, we once again do not have a definitive result, which means we are going to cut cards. Trustee Aziz has been nominated as the appointee. Trustee Jennings, we usually cut cards in alphabetical order. So Trustee Bell's proxy will cut first, and then you get to cut the cards. To remind everyone, it is High Card Bridge Convention. Yep. I know how to play bridge. All right. This was Trustee Bell's card.
Correct.
All right. So I'd like to congratulate Trustee Bell for being the member of the strike committee. I am now looking for nominations for the alternate. I see Trustee Dixon. Okay, I see Trustee Presley. Can you turn on your mic?
Pardon me. I would like to self-nominate.
All right, do we have a seconder? I see Trustee Kaplan-Murth. I see Trustee Scott.
I would like to nominate Trustee Jennings.
Okay. Trustee Jennings, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
All right. So I assume you will second your own nomination? All right. Do we have any other hands? Trustee Aziz,
And I move to close.
you can move to close nominations. All those in favor of closing nominations? And we have closed nominations. Everybody gets a ballot. I would ask those online to please send your messages to Manager Guthrie by text. Thank you, Manager Guthrie. I'm pleased to announce that Trustee Jenikins is the alternate to the committee. That brings us to matters for information. Are there any matters for information? Oh, my apologies. We need to ratify the votes that we have taken. All right, so it should now be appearing on your eScribe. Trustee Blackburn, we are waiting on you.
Yes, Madam Chair. Sorry, I had already turned off my e-scribe. I'm in favor.
All right, thank you. With that, this motion passes 12 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining, none absent. And that takes us to the end of this item and brings us to matters for information. Are there any matters for information? Seeing none, that brings us to the end of the meeting. This meeting is now adjourned. I have been told that our audience is cleared, which means you are free to leave whenever you'd like.